He was 16 years old when he made a decision that would haunt him for the next 12 years. Standing in the crowded halls of Seoul International Academy, watching the only girl who ever mattered walk away with tears streaming down her face, Min-jun whispered words that felt like ripping out his own heart. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." His father had given him an ultimatum that morning: choose the family legacy or lose everything, including any chance of ever protecting her. They called her unsuitable, dangerous to their reputation, a distraction from his destiny. What they didn't understand was that they were destroying the one person who made him want to be better than the cold, calculated heir they were molding him into. They had no idea they were creating a love story that would span over a decade, built on regret, growth, and a promise he never got the chance to make. Fast forward 12 years, he's now the most sought-after cardiac surgeon in South Korea, respected, untouchable, saving lives with hands that still remembered the warmth of hers. Successful beyond measure, but empty in ways that no amount of achievement could fill. And he's never stopped thinking about her, not for a single day, not for a single moment. The stethoscope slipped from Min-jun's fingers and clattered against the sterile hospital floor. His hand trembled as he bent to retrieve it, the metal cold against his palm, nothing like the warmth he'd been chasing for 12 years. Outside the window of his private office at Seoul Memorial Hospital, the city pulsed with life, but he felt disconnected from all of it. All he could see was her face in that memory he'd replayed 10,000 times, the moment he'd chosen duty over love and destroyed them both in the process. "Dr. Kong, your consultation is in 10 minutes. His nurse's voice came through the intercom, professional and distant, like everything else in his life. Min-jun didn't respond immediately. In exactly 6 hours, he would board a plane to Nairobi. In exactly 8 hours, he might see her again. The woman he'd walked away from when he was just a boy who thought he was making the noble choice. The woman who'd taught him that some mistakes you carry forever, no matter how successful you become. "Cancel the evening rounds," he said quietly. "I need to prepare for the trip." Some people thought he was crazy, one of the youngest head surgeons in the country's history, flying to Kenya for a medical conference he could easily skip, walking around like a man searching for something he'd lost long ago. But Min-jun had learned something in his 28 years: success meant nothing when you'd sacrificed your soul to achieve it. And 12 years ago, he'd cut out his own heart and handed it to his father on a silver platter. Her name was Amani Aching, and she had been his entire world when the world still felt possible. It started on a Wednesday in March, 14 years ago, when 15-year-old Min-jun sat in the Seoul International Academy library. Surrounded by medical textbooks he was already reading years ahead of his grade level. His life had been predetermined before he was born: medical school at Seoul National University, specialization in cardiothoracic surgery, eventually taking over his father's position as chief of surgery at the family's private hospital. Every minute scheduled, every choice mapped out, every deviation from the plan met with cold disappointment from a father who viewed love as weakness and compassion as liability. So when the new exchange student knocked over an entire shelf of books trying to reach one on the top, sending dozens of volumes cascading to the floor with a sound like thunder, Min-jun did what he'd been trained to do. He kept his eyes on his textbook and pretended not to notice. But then she laughed. It wasn't an embarrassed laugh or a quiet one. It was full and bright and completely unashamed, echoing through the library loud enough to make the stern librarian actually smile. She stood there in the middle of the chaos she'd created, books scattered around her feet like fallen leaves, laughing at herself with such genuine joy that Min-jun found himself smiling for the first time in months. "Need some help?" she asked, and he looked up to find the most beautiful girl he'd ever seen standing over him. Dark skin that seemed to glow even in the fluorescent library lights, eyes that sparkled with mischief and warmth, hair in natural coils that framed her face like a crown. She was wearing the school uniform completely wrong, her tie loose, her blazer unbuttoned, her skirt hem uneven like she'd adjusted it in a hurry. And somehow that made her more real than anyone in his carefully controlled world. "I'm Amani," she said, extending her hand with confidence that made his formal upbringing seem robotic. "I'm new and apparently very bad at library etiquette." "Min-jun," he managed, shaking her hand and feeling something spark to life inside him, something he didn't have a name for yet. "And that shelf has been unstable for months, you just gave it the final push." "So you're saying I did everyone a favor?" She raised an eyebrow, still smiling. Exactly, he found himself smiling back. And if you help me pick these up, I'll show you where the stable shelves are. Deal, she said, and dropped down beside him, and that's how it began. Not with destiny or fate, but with fallen books and a girl who laughed at herself and a boy who forgot for just a moment that his life wasn't supposed to include spontaneous moments of joy. They became inseparable in a way that confused everyone who knew Minjun. The perfect student who never broke rules, suddenly spending every free moment with the exchange student from Kenya who seemed to break rules without even trying. Amani was everything his world wasn't, warm where his family was cold, expressive where he'd been taught restraint, passionate about art and music and literature while he'd been groomed to care only about medicine and status. She'd drag him away from his studying to show him her latest charcoal drawings, portraits of students and teachers that somehow captured not just their faces but their souls. He'd explain medical concepts to her with an enthusiasm he'd never felt before, suddenly finding meaning in the career path he'd accepted as obligation. "Why do you want to be a doctor?" she asked one afternoon, watching him diagram the human heart with the precision of someone who'd been studying it for years. "Because my father is a doctor, his grandfather was a doctor, it's what I'm supposed to do." That's not an answer, she tilted her head, studying him the way she studied her subjects before drawing them. "What do you want, Minjun?" No one had ever asked him that. Not his parents, not his teachers, not the tutors who'd been preparing him for medical school since he was 10 years old. Minjun looked at Amani, at the way she saw the world as something full of possibilities instead of obligations, and realized he'd never wanted anything more than he wanted to keep feeling this way, alive and present and connected to something real. "I want to matter," he said quietly. "Not because of my family name, but because I actually help people." "Then help people," she said, as if it were that simple. "Be a doctor because you care, not because someone told you to." For a year, she made everything simple. She made everything better. At 16, Minjun would meet Amani on the school rooftop during lunch, bringing her the Korean snacks she'd developed a taste for while she brought him Kenyan tea in a thermos, spiced and sweet and nothing like the bitter green tea his father insisted built character. "I'm going back to Nairobi after graduation," Amani announced one day, her voice carrying a sadness that made his chest tight. "My dad's assignment here is almost done." "How long?" Minjun asked, though part of him didn't want to know the answer. "Probably 4 months, maybe 5. We have time." Time for what? He wanted to ask. Time to figure out how to keep her. Time to work up the courage to tell her that she'd become the only real thing in his carefully constructed life. Time to admit that he was falling in love with her in a way that terrified him because it was the first choice he'd ever made that was entirely his own. "So you could visit," she said, trying to sound optimistic. "After we graduate, after you start university, Kenya isn't that far." "My family would never allow it," Minjun said, and the words tasted like ash. "They barely tolerate that I spend time with you now." "Then don't ask permission," Amani bumped his shoulder with hers. "You're always so worried about what they think, Minjun." "What do you think? What do you want?" "I want you." The words came out before he could stop them, raw and honest and terrifying. "I want to keep talking to you every day. I want to know what you're drawing and what you're thinking and I want," he faltered, looking at her face, at the hope dawning in her eyes. "I want this to be real, not just something that ends when you get on a plane." "It is real," she said softly, taking his hand. "This is the most real thing in my life." Minjun, she hesitated, then pushed forward with the same courage she brought to everything. "I love you. I know we're young and everyone will say we're too young to know what love is, but I love you." "I love you too," he said, and meant it with every fiber of his being. The words felt like freedom and imprisonment all at once, freedom because he'd finally said what had been building inside him for months, imprisonment because he already knew how his family would react. They kissed on that rooftop as the sun set over Seoul, awkward and sweet and perfect. And Minjun felt something shift inside him, a quiet rebellion against the life that had been planned without his input. For 3 months, they existed in a bubble of teenage love that felt eternal. Secret meetings, stolen kisses, whispered conversations about futures that seemed possible when they were together. Minjun drew diagrams of hearts, both anatomical and metaphorical. In her sketchbooks, she drew portraits of him smiling, really smiling, in ways his family photos never captured. And then his father found out. The call came during dinner one evening. Minjun's father answered in the next room, his voice low and cold, discussing something with someone. When he returned to the table, his expression was carved from ice. "We need to talk about the girl." Minjun's mother looked up sharply. Minjun's chopsticks froze halfway to his mouth. "The African exchange student," his father continued, as if Amani's entire existence could be reduced to those 3 words. "This association ends immediately." "She's my friend," Minjun said carefully, trying to keep his voice steady. "You don't have friends, you have networking opportunities," his father's voice could have cut glass. "And this girl is neither appropriate nor beneficial to your future." "That's not fair, you don't even know her." "I know enough," his father set down his utensils with deliberate precision. "I know that you've been seen with her constantly. I know that people are talking. I know that your grades, while still excellent, have declined slightly. And I know that this distraction ends now." "She's not a distraction," Minjun felt anger rising, unfamiliar and hot. He almost said it, almost said "she's the person I love," but his father's expression stopped him. "You will cut ties with her immediately," his father said. "No calls, no meetings, no contact whatsoever. You will focus on your studies and your preparation for medical school. This is not a discussion." If you're enjoying this story so far, hit that subscribe button right now. Trust me, you don't want to miss what happens next. Minjun tried to fight. For 2 days, he argued and pleaded and bargained. His mother stayed silent, caught between her husband's authority and her son's pain. His father remained unmoved, threatening to pull him from the school, to cut off all privileges, to ensure that Amani's father's company contract in Korea would not be renewed. "He'll make sure her entire family suffers if you don't comply," his mother finally told him in a whisper, tears in her eyes. "Your father has connections everywhere. He'll destroy them, Minjun, please." And that's when Minjun realized he was trapped. He could fight for himself, but he couldn't protect Amani from his father's reach. The man who viewed human connections as transactions and love as leverage would think nothing of ruining an innocent family to prove a point. The day he ended it was overcast, the sky gray and heavy, matching the weight in his chest. He found Amani on the rooftop, their rooftop, sketching the city skyline. She looked up when she heard him approach, her face lighting up with that smile he loved, that smile he was about to destroy. "Hey, I was just drawing," she started, then stopped. Her artist's eye caught what her heart didn't want to see. "Minjun, what's wrong?" "We can't do this anymore," he said, and the words felt like he was performing surgery on himself without anesthesia. "What?" Confusion flickered across her face. "Can't do what?" "This," he gestured between them, unable to meet her eyes. "Us, I can't, my family, they won't." He was fumbling, making a mess of it. "I'm sorry, Amani, but we have to stop seeing each other." "Stop seeing each other," she repeated slowly, like she was trying to understand a foreign language. "Minjun, what are you talking about?" I thought. My father found out," the words rushed out. "He's threatening your family, threatening to make sure your dad loses everything. I can't let that happen. I can't let you suffer because of me." "So you're just ending it," her voice cracked. "Just like that, because your father said so." "I don't have a choice." "You always have a choice," tears were forming in her eyes now. "You're choosing to let him control you. You're choosing to give up." "I'm choosing to protect you," he said, finally meeting her gaze, letting her see his pain. "Don't you understand? If I fight this, he'll destroy your family. He has the power to do it, Amani. He'll make sure your father never works in Korea again, maybe never works anywhere. I can't do that to you. So instead you're breaking my heart." The tears fell now, tracking down her cheeks. "That's better somehow. It's better than ruining your life." His own tears started, hot and shameful. "I'm 16, Amani. I have no power, no money, nothing. All I can do is keep you safe by walking away." "This is you keeping me safe," she laughed bitterly. "Minjun, I don't need you to sacrifice yourself like some tragic hero. I need you to fight for us. There's nothing to fight with, his voice broke. Don't you think I want to? Don't you think I'd give anything to tell my father to go to hell and keep you in my life? But I'm a kid with nothing. He controls everything, my education, my future, everything. And he'll use that control to hurt you if I don't do what he says. Her face crumpled and she wrapped her arms around herself. I love you. I know, he whispered. I love you too, more than I've ever loved anything. That's why I have to let you go. You're a coward, she said, and the word hit him like a physical blow. Maybe, he agreed, because what else could he say? Maybe I am. She stood there for a long moment, tears streaming down her face, looking at him like she was trying to memorize every detail. Then she pulled off the bracelet he'd given her, a simple woven thing he'd bought at a market, and held it out. Take it, I don't want reminders. Keep it, his voice was barely audible. Please. When you look at it, remember that I loved you. That I always will, even if I'm too weak to fight for you. She closed her fist around the bracelet, her whole body shaking with sobs. I hate you for this, Min-jun, I hate you for giving up. I hate that you won't fight. I hate that you're letting them win. I hate me too, he said, and turned away before he could break completely, before he could take it all back and promise her things he had no power to deliver. He walked away from the rooftop, from Imani, from the only real happiness he'd ever known, and he didn't look back, because if he looked back, he would run back to her and damn the consequences. Let his father destroy them both. Better that than this hollow victory of protection through abandonment. For the remaining 2 months before her departure, they existed in the same school but different worlds. Imani stopped coming to the library, stopped eating lunch on the rooftop, stopped looking at him in the hallways. Min-jun threw himself into his studies with manic intensity, as if perfect scores could fill the void where his heart used to be. His father approved of his renewed focus. His mother watched him with sad eyes but said nothing. And Min-jun learned that you could be dying inside while everyone around you congratulated you on your success. The day Imani left Korea, Min-jun stood outside the airport, hidden in the crowd, watching her family load their luggage. He'd skipped school, lying to his father about a study group, just to see her one more time. She looked smaller somehow, diminished, wearing jeans and a simple shirt, her natural hair pulled back. The vibrant girl who'd laughed in the library seemed like a dream now. She never saw him there. Never knew he came. And Min-jun left before her plane took off, because he couldn't bear to watch her disappear into the sky. He went home to his father's approval and his mother's quiet concern and his own crushing guilt. The guilt never left. Through the rest of high school, through undergraduate studies at Seoul National University, through medical school and residency and fellowship training in cardiothoracic surgery, Min-jun carried the weight of his choice. He dated occasionally, beautiful women his father approved of, appropriate women from good families. None of them made him feel anything. None of them were Imani. By 25, he'd become exactly what his father wanted, a brilliant surgeon, cold and focused, respected and successful. By 28, he was head of cardiac surgery, the youngest in the hospital's history, performing life-saving operations with hands that were steady and sure. And every single night, he dreamed of a rooftop and a girl whose heart he'd broken to save her from his father's cruelty. His colleagues called him the ice doctor, brilliant but emotionally distant, excellent with patients but disconnected from everything else. They had no idea that the ice was protection, that underneath was a wound that never healed. Then came the invitation to speak at the Pan-African Medical Conference in Nairobi. A week-long event bringing together medical professionals from around the world to discuss innovations in cardiac care. Min-jun almost declined. His schedule was packed, his responsibilities immense. But then he saw the list of organizing committee members and his heart stopped. Dr. Imani Aching, Director of Medical Illustration, Nairobi Teaching Hospital. She'd become a doctor. Not the architect she'd dreamed of being, but she'd gone into medicine. And she was in Nairobi, where she'd always planned to return. Min-jun stared at her name on his computer screen for an hour. Then he accepted the invitation. His father questioned the decision. You're too busy for international conferences. Send one of your residents. I need to go, Min-jun said, and for the first time in 12 years, he didn't explain himself further. He didn't justify or defend. He simply decided. The flight to Nairobi was 14 hours of turbulence and anxiety. Minjun couldn't eat, couldn't sleep, just sat there with his heart racing like he was about to perform the most critical surgery of his life. What would he even say to her? Sorry I broke your heart because I was a coward? Sorry I chose my father's approval over your love? Sorry I've thought about you every single day for 12 years and never once had the courage to reach out? The conference was being held at a massive hotel and convention center in downtown Nairobi. Minjun arrived early, too anxious to wait in his room. The main hall was already bustling with attendees, registration tables set up, name badges being distributed. And then he saw her. Amani stood near the registration area, talking to a colleague, wearing professional attire that couldn't hide the warmth that had always radiated from her. She was more beautiful than he remembered, more confident, more herself. Her hair was in locks now, pulled back elegantly. She wore minimal makeup but didn't need any, her natural beauty undiminished by time. And when she laughed at something her colleague said, that same bright, unashamed laugh from 14 years ago, Minjun felt his carefully constructed walls crumble. She turned, scanning the room, and their eyes met across the crowded hall. He watched recognition flash across her face, watched her freeze mid-sentence, watched every emotion he'd been suppressing for 12 years play out on her features in seconds: shock, pain, anger, something else he couldn't name. She said something to her colleague and started walking toward him. Minjun's feet moved on their own, meeting her halfway. They stopped a few feet apart, an ocean of unsaid things between them. Amani, he said, and his voice cracked on her name. Minjun, she replied, her tone carefully neutral. 12 years. 12 years. She crossed her arms, a defensive gesture he remembered. You look good. You too, he managed. You became a doctor. Medical illustration, she said. I combined art and medicine. Seemed like a good compromise between what I wanted and what was practical. That's incredible, I knew you'd do something amazing. Did you? Her eyes flashed. Because last time we spoke, you seemed to think I was just a distraction from your destined path of excellence. Amani, please. Please what, Minjun? Please pretend you didn't shatter me? Please act like we're old friends catching up? Please make this comfortable for you? He deserved that. Deserved all her anger and more. Can we talk? He asked quietly. Somewhere private? Why, what's left to say? Everything, he met her gaze steadily. I have 12 years of things to say to you. And you think I want to hear them? I think you deserve the chance to tell me to my face what you probably wanted to tell me for over a decade, he said. That I'm a coward. That I gave up. That I destroyed something beautiful because I was too weak to fight for it. You're right about all of it. She studied him for a long moment, her artist's eye seeing past the expensive suit and the successful surgeon facade to the broken boy underneath. Fine, she said finally. There's a coffee shop outside the hotel. 30 minutes. Don't make me regret this. The coffee shop was quiet, tucked away from the conference chaos. They sat across from each other, cups of coffee neither of them touched, 12 years of silence pressing down like physical weight. I'm sorry, Minjun started, because that was all he could start with. I'm so deeply sorry, Amani. For all of it. For hurting you, for walking away, for choosing my father's approval over your love. For being exactly the coward you called me. You flew to Nairobi to apologize, she asked, her voice still guarded. I flew to Nairobi because when I saw your name on the conference committee, I couldn't breathe, he said honestly. Because I've spent 12 years trying to convince myself I made the right choice, and I never believed it, not for a single day. Every surgery I perform, every life I save, I think about how you told me to be a doctor because I care, not because someone told me to. Every success feels empty because you're not there to share it. That's not fair, she said, her voice shaking slightly. You don't get to come here after 12 years and tell me you've been pining away. You made your choice, Minjun. You chose your family and your career and your comfortable life. I chose to protect you. He leaned forward, desperate for her to understand. My father would have destroyed your family, Amani. He had the power and the vindictiveness to do it. I was 16 and powerless, and I couldn't let you suffer because you loved me. So you made the decision for both of us, she said. You decided that I'd rather have my father keep his job than keep you in my life. Did you ever think to ask me what I wanted? You were 16, what would you have done differently? Fought, she said fiercely. I would have fought, Minjun. Even if we lost, even if it was hard, I would have fought because you were worth it. But you didn't think I was worth fighting for. That's not true. Isn't it? Tears were forming in her eyes now. You walked away so easily. One conversation with your father and you gave up on us. There was nothing easy about it, his own eyes were burning. Walking away from you was the hardest thing I've ever done. Harder than any surgery, harder than any residency, harder than anything before or since. I've spent 12 years wondering if I made the right choice, wondering if you were okay, wondering if you hated me. Well, now you know, she said, wiping at her eyes angrily. I did hate you. For years, I hated you. You were my first love, Minjun. My first everything. And you discarded me like I meant nothing. You meant everything. He reached across the table, stopping just short of touching her hand. You still do. That's why I'm here. Not just to apologize, but to tell you that I never stopped, he faltered, searching for the right words. I never stopped loving you, Amani. I know I have no right to say that. I know 12 years is too long and I've probably lost any chance I ever had. But you deserve to know that you weren't forgettable. You were unforgettable. She stared at him, tears streaming down her face now. You broke my heart. I know. You made me feel like I wasn't worth fighting for. I know, and I'm sorry. I was young and stupid and terrified. But Amani, if I could go back, if I could do it differently. But you can't, she cut him off. You can't go back. We can't get those 12 years back, Minjun. We're different people now. I'd built a whole life without you. She took a shaky breath. I learned to be happy without you. I'm so glad, he said, and meant it. You deserve happiness. I never wanted to take that from you. I just wanted you to know that you changed my life. That loving you, even for that brief time, made me want to be better than what my family expected. That you're the reason I actually care about my patients instead of just seeing them as procedures. You made me human, Amani. And I never thanked you for that. If you're still watching, do me a favor and drop a comment below. Tell me, should Amani forgive him or walk away? Let me know your thoughts. They sat in silence for a while, the weight of 12 years slowly settling into something less suffocating. Finally, Amani spoke, softer now. I became a doctor because of you. What? Medical illustration specifically, because I couldn't give up art, but I wanted to understand the things you were so passionate about. She smiled sadly. Ironic, isn't it? You wanted to heal people to make up for hurting me, and I went into medicine to stay connected to you. We're both idiots, Minjun said, and surprised himself by almost laughing. Apparently, Amani agreed. Are you happy? He asked. Really happy? I'm content, she said carefully. I have a career I love. Friends, a life here in Nairobi. My family is doing well. She hesitated. I'm okay. But are you happy? He pressed gently. There was a long pause. No, she admitted. I'm not. I haven't been able to open my heart to anyone else. Every man I've dated, I compare them to you. To what we had. And nobody measures up, not because they're not good people, but because what we had it was real. Even though it ended terribly, it was real. I'm not happy either, Minjun confessed. I'm successful and respected and completely empty. I save lives and go home to an apartment that might as well be a hotel room. I have colleagues but no friends. I have family but no one who actually knows me. And I have no one to blame but myself. So what do we do now? Amani asked, looking at him with those eyes that still saw through every defense he'd built. I don't know, he said honestly. I didn't come here with a plan beyond telling you the truth. I don't expect forgiveness, Amani. I don't expect anything. I just needed you to know that you weren't just some teenage crush I forgot about. You were the most important person in my life, and I've spent 12 years regretting that I wasn't brave enough to fight for you. I kept the bracelet, she said suddenly. What? The bracelet you gave me, the woven one. You tried to make me keep it and I took it, but you said keep it and remember that I loved you. She pulled out her phone and showed him a photo, the faded, worn bracelet in a small frame on what looked like her bedside table. I kept it. I told myself I kept it to remember how stupid I'd been to fall in love so young, but really, I kept it because some part of me never wanted to forget you, either. Minjun's heart was racing. Why? Why keep it after I hurt you so badly? Because first love doesn't just disappear, she said. Because part of me understood, even when I was angry, that you were trying to protect me in the only way you knew how. Because I've spent 12 years telling myself I was over you, and seeing you walk into that conference hall proved I was lying. The conference lasted a week. Minjun and Amani spent every free moment together, cautiously rebuilding something between them. Not the innocent teenage love they'd shared, but something deeper, more complicated, weighted with years of hurt and growth and understanding. They talked for hours about everything, their careers, their families, their regrets. Minjun told her about the guilt that had shaped every decision he'd made. Amani told him about the walls she'd built around her heart. On the third day, Minjun met her at a small art gallery she'd recommended. She stood in front of a massive painting, vibrant colors depicting the Kenyan landscape at sunset, and he saw tears on her cheeks. What's wrong? He asked, moving beside her. This is mine, she said softly. What? I painted this 3 years ago, when I was trying to work through some things. I didn't know it was here. It's beautiful, Minjun said, studying the piece. The sunset, it reminds me of Seoul. Of that rooftop where we used to talk. She looked at him, surprised. That's exactly what it is. I was trying to capture what it felt like to lose something beautiful before you were ready to let it go. You captured it perfectly, he said. Amani, I need to tell you something. Okay? I'm in therapy now, he said. Have been for 3 years. Working through everything. The pressure from my father, the guilt about you, the emotional distance I developed. I'm trying to be better. That's good, she said. I'm proud of you for doing that. And part of getting better is learning to fight for what I want instead of always taking the path of least resistance. He turned to face her fully. I know I don't deserve another chance. I know 12 years is a long time and we're different people. But Amani, I'm not the powerless 16-year-old anymore. I'm financially independent from my family. I make my own decisions. And if you were willing, if there was even the smallest chance that we could, he struggled to find words that didn't sound presumptuous. I'm not asking you to forgive everything overnight. I'm just asking if you'd be willing to see if there's still something here worth exploring. I leave Kenya in 3 days, Minjun. I live in Seoul. We're still an ocean apart. I could move, the words came out before he'd fully thought them through, but once they were out, he realized he meant them. There's a need for cardiac surgeons everywhere. I could apply to positions here in Nairobi or I could take remote consultation work and split my time. I'm not asking you to uproot your life for me again, Amani. I'm saying I'm willing to uproot mine for you. You're serious? She looked shocked. Completely, he said. I spent 12 years living the life my father planned for me. I'm successful and miserable. Maybe it's time I build a life that actually makes me happy. And do you think I make you happy? I know you do, he said firmly. Even in this past 3 days, even while we've been navigating all this painful history, I felt more alive than I have in 12 years. You challenge me, Amani. You make me think and feel and actually live instead of just existing. That's worth more than any surgical position or family approval. She was quiet for a long time, studying the painting, then studying him. I'm scared, she finally said. I'm scared of getting hurt again. I'm scared that your family will interfere again. I'm scared that we're romanticizing something that only worked when we were young and naive. Those are all valid fears, Minjun acknowledged. I'm scared too. Scared that I'll disappoint you, scared that I'm not actually capable of being the partner you deserve. But I'm more scared of walking away again and spending another 12 years wondering what if. What if we try and it doesn't work, she asked. Then at least we'll know, he said. We'll know we gave it an honest chance. We'll know we were brave enough to fight for it this time. We can live with a real answer instead of a lifetime of what-ifs. She laughed, a small, watery sound. When did you become so wise? When I spent over a decade analyzing every mistake I've ever made in excruciating detail, he smiled slightly. Therapy and surgical precision applied to emotional devastation. It's a process. On the last day of the conference, Amani took Minjun to her family home, a beautiful property on the outskirts of Nairobi with sprawling gardens and a view of distant hills. Her parents remembered him immediately. Her father's expression was carefully neutral, her mother's was warm but cautious. You're the boy from Seoul, her father said, shaking Minjun's hand with a grip that was just slightly too firm. The one who broke my daughter's heart. Yes, sir, Minjun said, meeting his eyes directly. I was. And I've spent every day since regretting it. That's quite a claim, her father said. What makes you think you deserve a second chance? I don't think I deserve one, Minjun replied honestly. I think Amani deserves someone who will fight for her, and I'm hoping to prove that I've become that person. Even if it means leaving Seoul? Even if it means going against my family's wishes? Even if it means rebuilding my entire life in a new country? Especially then, Minjun said firmly. I learned the hard way that success without the people you love is just expensive loneliness. I don't want to make that mistake again. Her father studied him for a long moment, then nodded slightly. Amani makes her own decisions. But if you hurt her again, young man, you'll have me to answer to. And I promise you, I'm much more formidable than your father. Understood, sir, Minjun said, and he meant it. Dinner was pleasant but weighted with history. Amani's younger siblings, who'd been children when Amani left Seoul, were now adults with their own lives and opinions. Her brother, Daniel, was particularly protective, watching Minjun with suspicious eyes throughout the meal. So you're a big-shot surgeon now, Daniel said, his tone challenging. That must keep you very busy in Seoul. It does, Minjun acknowledged. But I'm realizing that being busy isn't the same as having a life worth living. And you think coming here, disrupting my sister's life after 12 years, that's going to give you a life worth living? Daniel pressed. Daniel, Amani said warningly, but Minjun held up a hand. Your brother has every right to question me, he said. To Daniel, he continued, I don't think I have the right to disrupt anything. But I do think I owe your sister honesty about how I feel, and if she's willing to give me a chance, I think we could build something real together. Something I was too weak and stupid to fight for when we were teenagers. Pretty words, Daniel said. But words are easy. Actions matter. You're absolutely right, Minjun agreed. Which is why I've already started looking into medical positions here in Nairobi. Why I've contacted 3 hospitals about consulting opportunities. Why I'm willing to prove through actions, not just words, that I'm serious about this. The table went quiet. Amani stared at him, her eyes wide. You've already been looking at jobs here, she asked. I started the day after our coffee shop conversation, Minjun said. I meant what I said, Amani. I'm not asking you to believe in promises anymore. I'm showing you I'm willing to back them up with concrete change. Her mother smiled for the first time that evening. Now that, she said softly, is the kind of action that matters. After dinner, Amani walked Minjun through the gardens. The Nairobi night was cool and clear, stars visible in a way they never were in Seoul's light pollution. You've really been looking at positions here, she asked, still sounding shocked. 3 interviews already scheduled for next month, he confirmed. 1 at Nairobi Teaching Hospital, actually. The same hospital where you work. I didn't know if that would be awkward or convenient, but the position is perfect, heading up their new cardiac care unit. Minjun, she shook her head in disbelief. That's a huge career move. It's the right move, he said firmly. I've spent 12 years climbing a ladder my father built. Maybe it's time I built my own. And if that ladder happens to be in the same city as you, well, that's just good planning. She laughed, really laughed, and the sound filled him with more joy than any successful surgery ever had. What if we try this and it doesn't work out? She asked. What if you move here and we realize we're not compatible anymore? What if we're chasing a memory of what we had instead of what we could actually have now? Those are all possibilities, Minjun admitted. But Amani, I've spent 12 years playing it safe. Making the smart choice, the cautious choice, the choice that disappointed no one except myself. He took her hands. For once, I want to make the choice that scares me. The choice that feels right even if it doesn't make logical sense. The choice that might not work but is worth trying anyway. You've changed, she said softly, studying his face. The Minjun I knew was always so careful, so controlled. This version of you, the one willing to take risks, it's different. Therapy and 12 years of regret will do that, he smiled slightly. Turns out when you spend long enough being miserable in your safe choices, you start to realize that safety isn't worth the cost. And if your father objects? If your family tries to interfere again? Then I'll deal with it, Minjun said. I'm not 16 anymore, Amani. I'm not financially dependent on them. I don't need their approval. And most importantly, I've learned that their love came with conditions I'm no longer willing to accept. He squeezed her hands gently. My father taught me to value reputation over relationships, status over substance. But you taught me that real connection matters more than any of that. I choose your lesson. She was quiet for a long moment, looking up at the stars, then back at him. Okay, she said finally. Okay? Okay, let's try this, she said, and he could hear both fear and hope in her voice. Not jumping back into what we had, because we're not those kids anymore. But let's see who we are now. Let's see if the people we've become can build something together. Slowly, carefully, without rushing or forcing it. Minjun felt like he could breathe fully for the first time in 12 years. Slowly and carefully sounds perfect, he said. I'll come back next month for the interviews. We can spend time together, real time, not just conference moments. Get to know each other again as adults. And if it doesn't work, she said, we promise to be honest about it. No more running away, no more silent suffering. We talk about it like adults and make decisions together. Together, he agreed. That's all I'm asking for, the chance to do this together instead of me making unilateral decisions to protect you from things you should get to decide about yourself. She smiled, and even in the darkness, he could see the warmth returning to her eyes. You really have changed, she said. I had to, he replied. The old version of me lost you. I needed to become someone worthy of a second chance. Before Minjun's flight back to Seoul, they met one more time at a small cafe near the airport. The weight of 12 years felt lighter now, transformed from crushing guilt into something more like hopeful anticipation. I'm terrified, Amani admitted, stirring her tea absently. Of this not working? Of it working. Of opening my heart again and having it broken. Of letting myself believe in us again. Me too, Minjun said. But I think being terrified means it matters. If this was easy, it probably wouldn't be worth doing. When did you become philosophical? She teased gently. Somewhere between the regret and the therapy, he smiled. It's a new development. Still working on it. His phone buzzed. His father calling for the third time that morning. Minjun declined the call. You should probably talk to him eventually, Amani said. I will, Minjun said. But on my terms, when I'm ready. Not when he demands it. He looked at her seriously. He's going to try to interfere again, Amani. When he finds out I'm considering a position in Nairobi, when he realizes why, he's going to do everything he can to stop it. And what will you do? Stand my ground, Minjun said firmly. I'm not the scared teenager anymore. I have my own money, my own reputation, my own life. He can disapprove all he wants, but he can't control me anymore unless I let him. What if he tries to hurt my family again? Then I'll make it very clear that any action against your family will result in me cutting all ties with him permanently. Minjun's voice was cold now, the steel that made him a successful surgeon showing through. I'll make it public if I have to. The great Dr. Kong Minjun disowned by his family for choosing love over duty. The press would have a field day, and it would be terrible for his precious reputation. You'd really do that? Amani asked, eyes wide. Without hesitation, he said. I let him control me once before. I let him take you away from me because I was afraid and powerless. I'm neither of those things anymore, Amani. And I will burn every bridge I have to if it means protecting you and us this time. She reached across the table and took his hand. Don't burn bridges yet, she said. Let's see if we even need to. Maybe your father has changed too. Maybe he'll surprise you. Maybe, Minjun said doubtfully. But I'm prepared either way. His flight was called over the intercom. They both stood, suddenly awkward with a goodbye. 1 month, he said. I'll be back in 1 month for the interviews. We'll video call in between? Every day if you want, she said. I want, he smiled. I want to know about your day, your work, your life. All of it. I've missed 12 years. I don't want to miss another day. They hugged, and it felt different from the tentative touches they'd shared during the conference. This felt like a beginning instead of an ending. Minjun, she said as he pulled away. Yes? Don't let your father bully you. But also, don't close the door completely. Family is complicated, and you might regret burning those bridges later. How are you so wise? He asked, touching her cheek gently. 12 years of therapy myself, she admitted with a small smile. Turns out we both had some healing to do. The flight back to Seoul was long, but Minjun spent it planning instead of dreading. He drafted his resignation letter, just in case. He researched the Nairobi positions more thoroughly. He practiced what he would say to his father when the inevitable confrontation came. And every few hours, he'd get a text from Amani. A photo of something beautiful she saw. A thought about their conversation. A simple thinking of you. Each message felt like proof that this was real, that they were really trying, that maybe, just maybe, they were going to get their second chance. The confrontation with his father came sooner than expected. Minjun had barely unpacked when his father arrived at his apartment, letting himself in with the key Minjun hadn't remembered to take back. We need to talk, his father said, his expression thunderous. Hello to you too, Minjun said calmly, continuing to unpack. How did you know I was home? I'm tracking your location. His father said it like it was completely normal. And I've been monitoring your communications. Minjun stopped unpacking and turned slowly. You've been what? Don't act surprised. You're my son. It's my job to protect you from making foolish decisions. Monitoring my communications is not protection, Minjun said, his voice dangerously quiet. It's a violation of privacy. And it stops now. I know about the girl, his father said, ignoring him. The African girl from 12 years ago. I know you saw her in Nairobi. I know you've been talking about moving there. Her name is Amani, Minjun said. Dr. Amani Aching. And yes, I saw her. Yes, we're reconnecting. And yes, I'm considering a position in Nairobi. Absolutely not, his father said. I will not allow you to throw away everything we built for some childhood infatuation. You don't get a say anymore, Minjun said, and his calmness seemed to surprise his father more than if he'd yelled. I'm 28 years old. I'm financially independent. I'm the head of cardiac surgery at one of the country's top hospitals. I don't need your permission or your approval. Everything you have is because of me, his father's voice rose. I made you who you are. No, Minjun corrected. You made me into what you wanted me to be. And I'm grateful for the education, the opportunities, the skills. But the person I actually am, the person who cares about patients instead of just procedures, The person who wants meaningful connections instead of strategic relationships. That person exists despite you, not because of you. And that person loves Amani Aching and is going to pursue a relationship with her whether you approve or not. If you do this, I'll cut you off completely, his father threatened. No family support, no connections, no safety net. Okay, Minjun said simply. His father blinked, clearly not expecting that response. Okay? Okay, cut me off, Minjun said. I don't need your money. I make my own. I don't need your connections. I built my own reputation. And I certainly don't need your conditional love. So if supporting my choices means being cut off, then I guess that's what happens. You're willing to lose your entire family for this girl, his father asked, incredulous. I'm willing to lose a family that only values me when I do exactly what they want, Minjun corrected. And honestly, Dad, is it really family if it comes with those conditions? Mom loves me regardless. My sister supports me. The only person who's threatening to cut me off is you. So maybe ask yourself if you're willing to lose your son over your pride and control issues. His father stared at him, face red with anger and maybe something else, shocked that his son was finally standing up to him. You're making a mistake, he said finally. Maybe, Minjun said. But it's my mistake to make. I spent 12 years living the life you wanted for me, and I was successful and miserable. Now I'm going to try living a life I actually want. And if it doesn't work out, at least I'll know I was brave enough to try. His father left without another word, slamming the door hard enough to rattle the frames on the walls. Minjun stood in the silence of his apartment, heart pounding, hands shaking slightly from the adrenaline. Then he picked up his phone and called Amani. She answered on the second ring. Hey, you okay? You sound stressed. I just told my father I'm choosing you over his approval, Minjun said, and despite the shaking hands, he felt lighter than he had in years. Oh my God, Minjun, what did he say? He threatened to cut me off from the family. And I said okay, Minjun laughed, a slightly manic sound. I actually said okay, Amani. I told him I don't need his conditional love or his control. There was silence on the other end. Then, are you okay? Really? I'm terrified, Minjun admitted. But I'm also free. For the first time in my life, I'm actually free. He sat down heavily on his couch. He might actually do it. Cut me off completely. And I'm okay with that. Is that crazy? That's brave, Amani said softly. That's growth. That's you finally choosing yourself, and us, over fear. I love you, the words came out naturally. I know we're taking this slow, I know we're being careful, but I need you to know. I love you, Amani. I never stopped, and I'm done pretending I'm not completely in love with you. He heard her breath catch. I love you too, she said. I'm scared of it, but I love you. I think I always have. If you're loving this story, please hit that like button. These kinds of love stories need to be shared. Let's keep going. The next month was a whirlwind. Minjun's mother called him in tears, proud of him for standing up to his father but worried about the fallout. His sister sent him a long message of support. His father didn't contact him at all. True to his word, his father began cutting him off. The family lawyer sent papers removing Minjun from the family trust. His name was removed from the hospital board. His parking spot at the family estate was reassigned. Minjun accepted each severance calmly, almost with relief. Each cut tie was proof that he was serious, that he was finally choosing his own path. His colleagues at the hospital were confused. The ice doctor was suddenly warm, smiling more, engaging with people on a personal level instead of maintaining professional distance. You seem different, one of his residents said during rounds. Happier. I am, Minjun said simply. I'm making better choices. He flew back to Nairobi for his interviews. All 3 hospitals were impressed, but the position at Nairobi Teaching Hospital was perfect. Heading up a new cardiac care unit, building a program from the ground up, training local surgeons in advanced techniques. And it was where Amani worked. They were careful during his visit, professional in the hospital setting, but spending evenings together exploring Nairobi, talking for hours, slowly rebuilding trust and connection. On his third night there, Amani took him to a small jazz club in a neighborhood full of artists and musicians. The music was incredible, the atmosphere intimate and warm. "This is my favorite place," she said, leaning close so he could hear her over the music. "I come here when I need to remember why I love the city." "I can see why," Minjun said, watching her face as she listened to the saxophone solo, seeing the pure joy there. "You're glowing." "I'm happy," she said, turning to look at him. "Really happy. For the first time in 12 years, I'm actually happy." "Me too," he said, taking her hand. They danced, badly, because neither of them really knew how to dance to jazz, but they laughed and held each other and didn't care who was watching. "This feels right," Amani said, her head resting on his shoulder. "Doesn't it? Like we're finally where we're supposed to be." "It does," Minjun agreed. "Like the last 12 years were just, I don't know, a detour. A painful, necessary detour that taught us what we needed to learn to appreciate this." "That's very optimistic of you." "I'm trying optimism on for size," he said. "It's surprisingly nice." At the end of the evening, he walked her home. Her apartment was in a vibrant neighborhood, full of life and color, so different from his sterile high-rise in Seoul. "Do you want to come up?" she asked, nervous. "Just for tea." "I'm not, we're taking this slow, remember?" "Tea sounds perfect," Minjun said. Her apartment was filled with her art. Paintings on the walls, sculptures on shelves, sketchbooks everywhere. It was warm and lived in and completely her. "This is amazing," he said, looking around. "Your work is everywhere." "I'm not as disciplined about keeping work and life separate as you are," she said, putting the kettle on. "My whole apartment is basically a studio that I happen to sleep in." "It's perfect," he said. "It's so you." They sat on her couch with tea, talking until late into the night. About their hopes for the future, about what a relationship between them might look like, about logistics and fears and possibilities. "If you take the Nairobi position," Amani said carefully, "I don't want you to do it just for me. It has to be because you want this life, this city, this work. Not just because I'm here." "It's both," Minjun said honestly. "I want the position because it's incredible professionally. But I also want it because you're here. Those things don't have to be mutually exclusive. You being here makes it the right choice instead of just a good choice." "What if we don't work out?" she asked. "What if you move here and 6 months from now we realize we're not compatible?" "Then I'll still have a job I love in a city that's vibrant and full of life," Minjun said. "And we'll navigate it like adults." "Amani, I'm not moving to Nairobi to trap you into a relationship. I'm moving because I want to build a life here. You're the center of that life, yes, but even if things don't work out romantically, I'd still want to be here." "Does that make sense?" "It does," she said. "And it makes me feel less guilty about you uprooting everything." "Don't feel guilty," he said firmly. "Feel hopeful. Feel excited. Feel scared if you need to. But don't feel guilty. This is my choice, my decision, made with open eyes and full awareness of the risks." She kissed him then, soft and sweet and full of promise. When he left Nairobi 2 days later, it was with a job offer in hand and a heart full of hope. The next months were a blur of logistics. Minjun gave notice at his hospital, recommended his replacement, began the process of moving his life across continents. His mother helped him pack, crying occasionally but supporting him fully. "Your father will come around," she said, carefully wrapping a frame. "He's just stubborn." "Maybe," Minjun said. "But Mom, I'm okay if he doesn't. I love him, but I can't live my life for his approval anymore." She hugged him tightly. "I'm so proud of you," she whispered. "So proud of the man you've become." His father never called. Never visited. Maintained his cold silence as Minjun dismantled his Seoul life and prepared for Nairobi. But the day before Minjun's flight, a package arrived. Inside was a small wooden box, intricately carved. And a note in his father's handwriting. Your grandfather gave me this when I defied my parents to marry your mother. He told me that true strength isn't in following the path laid out for you, but in having the courage to forge your own. I didn't understand until now. I still don't approve. But I respect your courage. Be happy, son. Inside the box was his grandfather's medical textbook, the one Min-jun had studied as a child, filled with margin notes and observations from 3 generations of doctors. Min-jun called his father. The phone rang 6 times before he answered. Thank you, Min-jun said simply. For the gift. For the note. His father was quiet for a long moment. I'm not ready to meet her yet, he said finally. I'm not ready to pretend I'm happy about this. But you're my son. And I don't want to lose you completely. I don't want to lose you either, Min-jun said. Even when you drive me crazy. His father made a sound that might have been a laugh. Call me when you get settled, he said. Let me know how the new position goes. I will, Min-jun promised. It wasn't forgiveness. It wasn't full reconciliation. But it was a door left open, and that was enough. Min-jun arrived in Nairobi on a bright morning in March. Amani met him at the airport, and when he saw her waiting in arrivals, smiling at him with that warmth that had changed his life 14 years ago, he knew he'd made the right choice. Welcome home, she said, and the words felt perfect. They moved slowly, carefully, like they'd promised. Min-jun got his own apartment initially, wanting to give them space to grow into their relationship naturally instead of rushing into cohabitation. His work at Nairobi Teaching Hospital was challenging and fulfilling in ways his sole position never had been. He was building something new, training doctors who would serve their communities, making a real difference instead of just serving wealthy patients who could afford the best care. And he got to see Amani every day. They'd have lunch in the hospital cafeteria, discussing cases and art and everything in between. They'd spend evenings exploring Nairobi, weekends hiking in the surrounding hills, slowly weaving their lives together. 6 months in, Min-jun realized he was happier than he'd ever been. Not just content, not just successful, but genuinely, deeply happy. I love my life, he told Amani one evening. They were at her apartment, cooking dinner together, moving around each other with the easy familiarity of people who fit. I love my work, I love this city, I love us. Me too, she said, stirring the sauce. It's scary how good this feels. Like I'm waiting for something to go wrong. What if nothing goes wrong, Min-jun suggested. What if we just get to be happy? Is that allowed, she teased. I think so, he wrapped his arms around her from behind. I think we've paid our dues. I think we've earned some uncomplicated happiness. 1 year into his Nairobi life, Min-jun proposed. Not with a grand gesture or public display, but quietly, in Amani's apartment, surrounded by her art and the life they'd built together. I want to marry you, he said. I want to build a family with you. I want to grow old with you. I want everything, Amani. All of it. Forever. She said yes through happy tears. They married 6 months later in a ceremony that blended Korean and Kenyan traditions. Min-jun's mother attended, proud and tearful. His sister came with her family. Even his father showed up, awkward and uncomfortable but present, making an effort. When Min-jun's father met Amani properly, shaking her hand with careful formality, he said, I apologize for my past behavior. For trying to keep you apart. I was wrong. Thank you, Amani said graciously. That means a lot. She makes you happy, his father observed, watching how Min-jun stayed close to Amani, always touching her somehow, hand on her back, fingers intertwined with hers. She does, Min-jun said. She always has. Then I'm glad you didn't listen to me, his father said, and it was the closest thing to a blessing Min-jun was likely to get. The wedding was beautiful. Their vows made everyone cry. And when they kissed as husband and wife, Min-jun felt the final pieces of his broken teenage heart finally heal completely. 3 years later, Min-jun sat in their home, a beautiful house with a garden where Amani could paint outdoors, watching his wife play with their 2-year-old son, Kwame. The boy had Min-jun's eyes and Amani's smile, and he was perfect. Their daughter, Sora, was due in 3 months. They'd planned for both children to have names honoring both their heritages, bridges between their two worlds. "Papa," Kwame ran to him, clutching a toy stethoscope. "Doctor, like you." "Just like me," Minjun scooped him up, pressing kisses to his chubby cheeks. "But hopefully you'll be braver than I was." "He's already brave," Amani said, joining them. She settled into Minjun's lap, their son between them, and Minjun wrapped his arms around his entire world. This was what he'd been looking for all those years ago. Not just Amani, though she was the center of everything, but this life they'd built together. This family, this love that grew deeper every day, this sense of belonging he'd never felt in his carefully controlled soul existence. "Do you ever regret it?" Amani asked softly, like she could read his thoughts. "The 12 years we lost? Everything you went through?" "Never," Minjun said firmly. "I regret how I handled things when we were teenagers. I regret causing you pain. But the journey that brought us here, all of it was necessary. We both needed to grow up, to become the people we are now. Those 12 years taught us what we needed to know to appreciate this." "I still can't believe we made it," she said. "After everything." "I always knew we would," Minjun said. "Maybe not consciously, maybe not in ways I could articulate. But some part of me always knew that you were my person. That we'd find our way back to each other." "Sappy," she teased, but her eyes were wet. "Accurate," he corrected. Kwame squirmed between them, demanding attention, and they laughed and focused on their son, on the moment, on the beautiful, ordinary life they'd fought so hard to build. That weekend, they drove out to a nature preserve outside Nairobi. The landscape was breathtaking, wide open spaces under huge skies, so different from both Seoul and the Kenyan cities. "This reminds me of that rooftop," Amani said, watching Kwame run through the grass. "Where we used to meet in Seoul. Do you remember?" "Every detail," Minjun said. "I thought about that rooftop for 12 years. About what I should have said, what I should have done differently." "We were kids," Amani said gently. "We did the best we could with what we knew. I should have fought for you. And I should have understood better why you couldn't." She turned to look at him. "We've both forgiven each other, Minjun. Maybe it's time we forgive our teenage selves too." He pulled her close, kissing her forehead. "When did you get so wise?" he asked. "When I married a man who spent 12 years learning from his mistakes," she smiled. "Some of that growth rubbed off on me." As the sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink, Minjun watched his son play in the grass. Watched his pregnant wife sketch the landscape with quick, sure strokes. Watched his life unfold in ways his teenage self could never have imagined. His phone buzzed. A text from his father. "How is everyone? Send photos of my grandson." Minjun smiled and took a picture, Amani sketching, Kwame examining a flower with intense concentration. He sent it to his father with a simple message, "We're happy. Come visit soon." The response came quickly, "I'd like that. Your mother and I will plan a trip." Small steps. Slow reconciliation. But it was happening. Amani looked up from her sketching. "Everything okay?" "Everything is perfect," Minjun said, and meant it completely. That night, after Kwame was asleep, Minjun and Amani sat on their veranda, listening to the sounds of Nairobi settling into evening. "Thank you," Minjun said suddenly. "For what?" "For waiting," he said. "For giving me a second chance. For being patient while I figured out how to be brave. For building this life with me." "Thank you for coming back," Amani said. "For keeping your promise even if it took 12 years. For choosing us over everything else. For being the partner I always hoped you'd become." "I love you," he said. "More than I loved you at 16, more than I loved you when I found you again. More every single day. I love you too," she leaned into him. "My first love, my only love, my forever love." And sitting there under the Nairobi stars, surrounded by the life they'd built from the ashes of teenage heartbreak, Minjun finally understood something fundamental. True love wasn't about perfect timing or ideal circumstances. It wasn't about everything going smoothly or never making mistakes. true love was about growth and forgiveness. About having the courage to admit when you were wrong and the strength to try again. About fighting for each other, even when that fight took years. About building something real from broken pieces. He'd lost Amani once because he was too weak to fight for her. He'd found her again because he'd finally become strong enough to fight for himself. And now, they had forever. Not the innocent, naive forever they'd dreamed of as teenagers, but a better forever. One built on truth and trust and the deep understanding that they'd both had to grow separately before they could grow together. Some people would say you can't go back. That first loves never work out. That childhood promises mean nothing in the real world. Dr. Minjun Kong and Dr. Amani Aching proved them all wrong. Because real love doesn't have an expiration date. It doesn't fade with time or distance. It waits. It evolves. It grows stronger through adversity. And when two hearts are truly meant to be together, not even 12 years of separation, an ocean between continents, family opposition, and their own mistakes can keep them apart. They'd lost their way. They'd found each other again. They'd fought for their second chance. And they'd won. This is their story. A story of regret and redemption. Of love that refused to die. Of two people who had to lose everything to find what truly mattered. Of a Korean surgeon who crossed an ocean for his African queen, and a brilliant woman who believed in second chances even when her heart had been broken. They waited. They grew. They fought. They won. And they lived happily ever after, exactly the way they should have from the beginning, but better, because they'd earned it. If this story touched your heart, please hit that subscribe button, drop a comment telling us what part moved you most, and share this with someone who believes that true love is worth fighting for. Because stories like this remind us that sometimes the longest journeys bring us exactly where we're meant to be. And real love, the kind that changes you and challenges you and makes you better, that love is always worth the wait.